Welcome back, heroes of history. Today we bring you the story of a hero whose name slowly faded into the noise of history. A soldier, a commander whom the world rarely remembers, yet whose courage and leadership once left the enemy stunned. This is the story of a man who refused to surrender even in impossible circumstances. A man who fought among frozen mountains, icy winds, and silent seas, and changed the course of a brutal battle. The year was 1940. A remote city in Norway, Narvik. Cold winds were sweeping across the land. The narrow sea passages, known as fjords, were silent and still. Everything looked calm. But beneath that silence, a violent war was about to erupt. Under the cover of darkness, German warships were moving toward Narvik. They believed that within a few hours, the city would fall into their hands, and no one would be able to stop them. But what they did not know was that within the Norwegian army stood a commander who would change the fate of this frozen battle. A man whose decisions made the enemy pause in disbelief, whose determination turned the impossible into reality, and whose leadership carved history into the snowy valleys of Norway. That man was Carl Gustav Fleischer, a hero whose name many people have never heard, yet whose bravery shattered the enemy's confidence during the Battle of Narvik. In today's story, we will explore the journey of Carl Gustav Fleischer, from an ordinary soldier to a remarkable commander, and discover how he changed the direction of the icy battle that the world now remembers as the Battle of Narvik. So let us travel back in time to the beginning of a story that proves how the courage of one person can change a war. In the late 19th century, Europe was passing through a strange and uncertain era. Empires looked strong from the outside, yet many of them were slowly weakening within. Nationalism was rising, and the shadows of future wars were quietly forming. Far in the cold lands of Northern Europe, in Norway, a child was born who would one day lead a dramatic battle of World War II. That child was Carl Gustav Fleischer. He was born in 1883 into a military family. In his home, conversations about discipline, duty, and military service were common. His father had served in the army. Fleischer grew up learning an important lesson from a very early age. Discipline and responsibility are the foundations of strength. Norway was a beautiful country, but life there was far from easy. Long winters, deep snow, and harsh winds shaped the people. He spent much of his childhood running across snowy fields and climbing hills. The harsh environment built his endurance and resilience. Fleischer was a quiet boy who preferred observing. Teachers noticed he analyzed situations more carefully than other students. This habit of observation and thoughtful decision-making would later become one of his greatest strengths. As a military commander, as he entered his teenage years, an important question stood before him. What path would he choose in life? For Fleischer, the answer was clear. His family tradition and leadership instincts pointed toward one direction: the military. He decided to join the Norwegian Military Academy. Life inside was not easy. Cadets had to wake up before sunrise. They had to endure strict training schedules, follow rigid rules, and constantly prove their physical and mental strength. But Fleischer stood out. Where others grew tired, he pushed himself further. Where others complained, he focused on learning. One of his greatest strengths was his ability to make calm decisions under pressure. During a training exercise, a difficult situation appeared. Fleischer quickly assessed the situation, gave clear instructions, and guided his group through the challenge within minutes. One instructor reportedly said, "This young man will one day become a great commander." No one knew how true those words would become. As the 20th century approached, Europe was rapidly changing. Major powers were competing for influence and building stronger armies. Norway understood that global tensions could one day affect them. They needed officers who were not only brave, but also strategic. Fleischer was becoming exactly that kind of officer. Over the years, his planning skills and leadership made him stand out. He believed that wars are not won by weapons alone, they are won by intelligence, preparation, and courage. However, he had no idea that within a few decades his country would face a powerful enemy, and he would lead a remarkable battle. In the far north of Norway, there was a remote city surrounded by mountains and icy waters. That city was called Narvik. Few imagined that this quiet port would become one of the most important battlegrounds of the Second World War. But that moment had not yet arrived. For now, he was simply a young officer learning, preparing, and building experience. History teaches us that great achievements do not happen suddenly. Behind every great moment are years of discipline and dedication. The habits he developed in his early years were the qualities that helped him stand firm. The greatest test of his life was still ahead. Carl Gustav Fleischer was no longer just a young cadet. The strict training of the military academy had shaped him into a disciplined and thoughtful officer. With time, a quiet confidence began to grow within him. He understood that a military career was about patience, strategy, and making the right decision. Fleischer began his military service in the early 20th century. At that time, Europe appeared peaceful, but beneath that calm, powerful changes were taking place. Major nations were watching each other closely. New technologies were being developed, armies were expanding, and weapons were becoming more advanced. Norway was a small and peaceful nation. However, its people valued independence deeply. Military leaders understood that global tensions could eventually reach their borders. Fleischer was among the officers who paid close attention to these conditions. He believed in learning and understanding the deeper aspects of warfare. He spent long hours studying the history of previous wars, reading about famous military strategies, and analyzing how great commanders had succeeded or failed. One idea especially influenced his thinking: wars are not won only on the battlefield, they are first won in the mind. In 1914, the world entered the First World War. Nations mobilized millions, and the battlefield became more destructive than ever before. For Fleischer, the war became an important learning experience. He carefully studied how military leaders handled large-scale battles and made decisions under pressure. When the war ended, Europe entered a short period of peace. However, beneath the surface, several empires had collapsed and many nations were left with anger. A new power was beginning to rise in Germany. A government was rapidly rebuilding its military strength, aiming to expand its influence across Europe. Norway's geography made it strategically important. Its coastline stretched for thousands of kilometers, and its northern territories held vital resources. By this time, Fleischer had become an experienced officer. One of his core beliefs was simple: a true leader stands with his soldiers when it's difficult. The year 1940 was approaching. A powerful German force would move toward Norway. Their objective was Narvik, a vital port for iron ore. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and the Second World War began. Norway hoped to remain neutral, but wars rarely remain limited to one place. Narvik remained open because of its warm ocean currents. For Germany, this iron ore was essential for the production of weapons and military equipment. In April 1940, German warships moved silently toward the Norwegian coastline. Thousands of soldiers were on board, ready to seize important cities and ports. When the message reached Fleischer, he immediately understood that this was the beginning of a major conflict. Without hesitation, he began organizing his forces. He planned to use the mountains, snow-covered terrain, and narrow passes to slow the enemy. The region of Narvik was transforming into a battlefield. Great challenges appear suddenly, but those who prepare in advance face them with confidence. Carl Gustav Fleischer's greatest test was about to begin. The frozen Battle of Narvik. In April 1940, the cold winds of northern Norway echoed through the frozen mountains. Snow-covered valleys lay silent beneath a pale sky. But beneath that silence, a fierce conflict had already begun. The region around Narvik was slowly transforming into a battlefield. German forces had launched a sudden invasion and quickly moved to seize the city. Their warships had entered the narrow fjord. German soldiers began occupying key locations in the town. At first, it seemed as if Germany would achieve a rapid victory, but the Norwegian army had no intention of surrendering. By this time, Carl Gustav Fleischer had become one of the key commanders responsible for organizing Norway's resistance in the north. Facing him was a powerful enemy army with more soldiers, stronger equipment, and greater experience in modern warfare. Yet Fleischer possessed an advantage that the enemy did not. He understood the land better than anyone else. He knew the mountains, the narrow valleys, and the frozen terrain of Norway. These landscapes were not easy for an invading force to navigate. Fleischer quickly formed a defensive strategy. Instead of confronting the German forces directly in open battle, he positioned Norwegian troops across the mountains. His soldiers used the terrain itself as protection, forcing the enemy to move through difficult routes. This was not a traditional battlefield. Instead of large armies clashing in open fields, the fighting occurred across snowy slopes, frozen valleys, and narrow mountain paths. Small groups of soldiers clashed in sudden encounters, often in extreme weather conditions. Every step was dangerous. The cold was so intense that soldiers struggled to remain outside for long periods. Snow made movement slow and exhausting. At any moment, an enemy patrol could appear from behind the rocks or trees. But the Norwegian soldiers were familiar with these conditions. They had grown up in this environment. They understood the mountains, the hidden paths, and the safest ways to move through the frozen terrain. Meanwhile, help from outside Norway was beginning to arrive. Britain and France decided to support Norway and sent their forces toward the region. Allied troops began landing in northern Norway, joining the struggle to push German forces out of Narvik. For Fleischer, this was an important moment. The battle was no longer Norway's fight alone. It had become a larger international effort. Soon, another dramatic confrontation unfolded within the Narvik fjord. British naval ships launched a powerful attack against the German destroyers stationed there. The calm waters of the fjord suddenly exploded with gunfire and heavy artillery. Shells struck the German ships. Explosions echoed across the surrounding mountains. Several German destroyers were destroyed, while others were heavily damaged. This naval battle created a serious problem for the German forces. Without strong naval support, their supply routes became uncertain. Fleischer recognized this opportunity immediately. He increased pressure on German positions by advancing Norwegian and Allied troops through the mountains. Slowly but steadily, the defenders began tightening their control around the enemy. The battle remained extremely difficult. Freezing weather, deep snow, and unpredictable terrain made every operation dangerous. Sudden snowstorms forced soldiers to halt their movement. Yet the morale of the Norwegian soldiers remained strong. Fleischer often moved close to the front lines to encourage his troops. He was not the type of commander who stayed far away from danger. He believed a leader should stand close to those he commands. During one difficult moment, an officer expressed concern about the enemy's superior strength. Fleischer calmly responded with words that became legendary. Strength does not only come from weapons. True strength comes from determination. Those words strengthened the resolve of the soldiers. Days of fighting continued as the struggle around Narvik intensified. Finally, the moment arrived. Norwegian and Allied forces launched a coordinated attack. Soldiers advanced through the mountain passes. Gunfire echoed through the valleys. Explosions shattered the silence of the landscape. German forces faced heavy resistance. After intense fighting, Norwegian and Allied troops finally succeeded in entering the city. Narvik had been recaptured. This victory became one of the earliest successful operations against German forces during the Second World War. German troops were forced to retreat, and the defenders proved that even a smaller nation could resist a powerful enemy. With courage and leadership, behind this success stood an important figure, Carl Gustav Fleischer. His leadership, planning, and determination had played a crucial role in turning the tide of the battle. The battle demonstrated that strong leadership and unwavering courage could challenge even the most powerful opponents. The Battle of Narvik teaches an important lesson. Success belongs to those who remain calm and use their knowledge to overcome challenges. Those qualities were exactly what made Fleischer one of the remarkable leaders remembered in the history of the Second World War. The silent struggle after victory. The frozen valleys of Narvik had witnessed a battle that surprised the world. A city that German forces had expected to capture quickly had instead become the site of fierce resistance. After intense fighting, Narvik was recaptured by Norwegian and Allied forces. At the center of this achievement stood one man, Carl Gustav Fleischer. His leadership, strategic thinking, and determination had played a crucial role in turning the tide of the battle. To the soldiers who fought under his command, he was more than just a general. He was a leader who inspired his men to keep fighting. However, history is not always simple or fair. Even as the victory at Narvik was being celebrated, events across Europe were changing rapidly. Germany launched a powerful invasion of France. The Western Front was becoming dangerous. Britain and France urgently needed their troops elsewhere. Because of this, the Allied command made a difficult decision. Their forces in Norway had to withdraw. For Norway, this was a devastating development. The Norwegian army would be left alone against the full strength of the German military. Fleischer understood the seriousness. He had done everything to defend his country, but decisions were now being made far beyond the battlefield. After the withdrawal, German forces quickly regained control. Soon, the entire country fell under German occupation. It was a painful chapter for Carl Gustav Fleischer. The situation was deeply frustrating. The government and the royal family were forced to leave and continue resistance from abroad. Fleischer also wanted to continue serving, but despite his success at Narvik, he did not receive the role or recognition many believed he deserved. Due to political disagreements and military decisions within the leadership, he was not given the level of command that might have been expected. For a man devoted to discipline, duty, and service, this was a painful experience. A soldier hopes his sacrifices will be understood and respected. As time passed, the war continued, but Fleischer's own life became increasingly quiet and isolated. He remained a man deeply committed to his principles. Yet sometimes, when a person lives strongly by such principles, the disappointments of life can feel even heavier. In 1942, a tragic moment arrived. Carl Gustav Fleischer ended his own life. The news shocked many people in Norway. A general who led his country during its most critical battles had passed away quietly, far from the recognition he deserved. Gradually, his contributions began to receive greater recognition. Today, he is remembered as a courageous leader who stood firm. The Battle of Narvik remains one of the most important early campaigns. And whenever that battle is remembered, one name is always mentioned. The man who proved that even a small nation can stand against a powerful enemy with courage and determination. His story reminds us that true heroes are not always the ones who receive immediate recognition. Sometimes they quietly fulfill their duty. A person should stand firmly by their principles. Even if the world does not recognize them, true success lies in courage, honesty, and responsibility. Carl Gustav Fleischer lived his life by those values. He remains one of the quiet heroes whose story continues to inspire future generations. And with that, the story written in the frozen valleys of Narvik comes to its end. The story of a commander who refused to surrender even in the hardest moments. The name Carl Gustav Fleischer may not be remembered by everyone today, but the snowy mountains of Narvik and the echoes of that battle still remind us that sometimes the courage of a single person can change history. History also teaches us something powerful, that some heroes do not seek fame or applause. They simply do their duty quietly and leave their mark on time itself. If you enjoyed discovering this forgotten story with us, then thank you for being part of this journey. If you would like to see more hidden stories from history, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts. Your support helps keep heroes of history alive. And remember, there are still many forgotten names hidden in the pages of history. Stories that the world has not fully heard yet. So stay curious, because in the next video, we will return with another powerful story, another forgotten hero, and another chapter from history waiting to be uncovered. Until then, stay with Heroes of History.